Marriage isn't supposed to feel like a guessing game. You're supposed to know where you stand, trust the person beside you, believe that the life you've built together means something. For a long time, I did. Cordelia and I had built a life that looked perfect from the outside: 3 kids, a successful business, a home that we had poured years into, and Oliver, he was just our assistant. Someone we hired, mentored, gave opportunities to. Someone we trusted to be part of our daily lives. I never saw the way she looked at him. I never noticed how often she found reasons to be alone with him. I never questioned the late nights, the unexplained absences, the way she brushed off my concerns with a laugh and a condescending pat on the arm, until one night, when I stopped ignoring the signs. And I learned the hard way that I wasn't her husband anymore. I was her cover. It's funny how easy it is to ignore the obvious when you don't want to. Believe it, Cordelia had been acting different for months, dressing up more, working later, constantly glued to her phone. I told myself it was just stress, that she was invested in the business more than usual, but the moment I saw Oliver's name on her screen, something in my gut twisted. See you soon. Can't wait. Those 4 words sent my world into a free fall. That evening, Cordelia had another business meeting. Don't wait up, she said casually, grabbing her purse. It's going to be a late one. She kissed my cheek, routine, effortless, like she hadn't just lied to my face. I waited exactly 5 minutes before getting in my car and following her. She didn't go to the office, she didn't go to a restaurant, she pulled into a hotel parking lot. I felt my entire body go numb as I watched her step out of the car, smoothing down her dress, checking her reflection like it mattered more than the life she was destroying. Then Oliver appeared. He didn't hesitate. He walked right up to her, smiling, his hand sliding over her waist like it belonged there. Cordelia didn't flinch, she didn't pull away, she leaned into him. Comfortable. Familiar. Like this wasn't the first time. Like it had been happening for a while. I should have gotten out of the car right then. I should have yelled. Confronted them. Made a scene, but I didn't because I needed more. I stayed in the car, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ached, and watched them walk into the hotel together. My wife wasn't just cheating, she had a whole separate life I hadn't even known about. She had been lying, not for days or weeks, but months. When she finally came home later that night, she walked in like nothing had happened. She set her purse down, kicked off her heels, smiled at me. You're still up? She asked, her voice light, easy. My stomach turned. Yeah, I said slowly, keeping my expression blank. Couldn't sleep. She kissed my cheek, the same lips that had been on him hours ago, and disappeared into the bedroom. I stayed where I was, staring at the wall, my mind racing. Cordelia thought she had gotten away with it, she thought I was too blind, too trusting to ever question her, but now, I knew the truth, and I wasn't just going to let it slide. This wasn't over. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment in my head. Cordelia stepping into that hotel, Oliver's hand on her waist, the way she leaned into him like it was the most natural thing in the world. I wanted to explode. I wanted to wake her up, shake her, demand to know how long she had been lying to me, how long she had been making a fool out of me. But I didn't, because Cordelia was a liar. A manipulator. Someone who could twist any situation into something that wasn't her fault. If I confronted her now, she'd just gaslight me. I needed proof. The next morning, Cordelia acted like nothing had happened. She kissed me before rushing out the door, claiming she had another meeting. I nodded, smiled, pretended like I wasn't planning my next move. As soon as she left, I did something I never thought I'd have to do. I called a private investigator. I wasn't going to confront her with suspicions. I was going to confront her with evidence. Later that night, I decided to test her. She came home late again, looking refreshed, energized, like she had just spent the evening doing something thrilling. She walked in, dropped her purse, and stretched. God, I'm exhausted. I sat on the couch, acting casual. How was work? She sighed dramatically. Stressful. Oliver and I had to go over some last-minute financials. Oliver, she didn't even blink when she said his name. Didn't hesitate, she had no idea that I knew. I nodded, keeping my face neutral. Yeah. Where'd you guys meet? She didn't miss a beat. At the office, obviously. I let out a low breath. She had no idea how easily she had just handed me what I needed. Cordelia was a liar, a confident liar, but now, I was watching her lie to my face in real time, and that meant I could destroy her on my terms. After that night, I stopped questioning if Cordelia was lying. I knew she was. The way she said Oliver's name so casually, the way she didn't even flinch when she told me they were working at the office, the way she had no idea I was already 3 steps ahead of her. I didn't confront her yet. Not because I was afraid, but because I wanted her to dig her own grave. 3 days later, the private investigator sent me his findings. She wasn't just sneaking off occasionally, she was seeing Oliver regularly, multiple times a week, meeting at the same hotel I had seen them enter before, and it got worse. One of the photos the investigator sent me was of Cordelia and Oliver in our car, not his. Not a rental, ours. She had been sleeping with him in the same car she used to take our kids to school. My stomach twisted. Disgust. Anger. Pure betrayal. She wasn't just having an affair, she was rubbing it in my face. That night, Cordelia came home late again. I already knew where she had been. I had the time-stamped photos to prove it. I heard her heels clicking on the floor as she walked in, stretching like she'd had a long day. Another late night? I asked, my voice calm. She sighed. Yeah. Oliver and I had a last-minute meeting with a client. I stared at her, memorizing the way she said it so effortlessly. Then I asked, did you use our car? She blinked. A fraction of a second of hesitation. No, she said quickly. I took my own. That was all I needed. I smiled. Good. Just wondering. Then I kissed her on the cheek, just like she had done to me so many times while lying. She had no idea, but she was about to find out, and when she did, it would be too late. Cordelia had no idea that every time she opened her mouth, every time she spun another lie, she was walking straight into a trap. She thought she had me fooled. She thought I was still the trusting, clueless husband she had been playing for months, but I wasn't. I was waiting. Watching. Setting the stage, and soon, I was going to watch her entire world collapse around her. That weekend, I made a plan. I told Cordelia I had to go out of town for business, an emergency meeting that would keep me away for the night. She barely hesitated before saying, "Oh, that's too bad." Too bad for who? Because I knew exactly what she would do, and I was ready for it. I didn't actually leave town. Instead, I stayed close, parked down the street, watching. I didn't have to wait long. An hour after I left, Oliver arrived at my house. He walked in like he belonged there, like this was his home, like my kids' toys on the floor and my wedding photos on the walls meant nothing. I gripped the steering wheel, forcing myself to stay calm. I needed proof she couldn't deny. So I waited. I let them get comfortable. Waited until I was sure they were settled, then I walked up to the front door, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I wanted them to feel it, the slow, creeping realization that their secret wasn't a secret anymore. Cordelia appeared at the top of the stairs in a robe. Her hair was messy, her face flushed, her expression frozen in pure shock. And Oliver, he stepped out of the bedroom in nothing but his underwear. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then, finally, I broke the silence. Well, I said, my voice calm, steady. Is this the client meeting you told me about? Cordelia's face drained of color. Nate, she started, already scrambling for a lie. I held up a hand. I wasn't interested in hearing it. Oliver stood there like an idiot, his mouth opening and closing, searching for words, but I wasn't here for him. I looked Cordelia dead in the eyes and said, pack your things. She blinked. What? You heard me. I stepped forward, my voice lowering. Pack your things. Get out of my house. Cordelia panicked. She rushed down the stairs, trying to reach for me. Nate, wait. It's not what it looks like. I laughed. Cold. Sharp. Final, really? I pulled out my phone, showing her the pictures. The timestamps. The proof of every lie, every betrayal. Then what is it? She stared at the screen, her mouth slightly open. She had nothing. No excuse. No story. For the first time, Cordelia was speechless, and I had never felt stronger. You need to leave, I said again, calmly, as if I were discussing the weather. Nate, please. Her voice broke. Think about the kids. My blood boiled. She hadn't been thinking about the kids when she was sneaking around in their home, she hadn't been thinking about me, our marriage, our family, she had only thought about herself. So I met her eyes, and for the first time in our marriage, I saw her exactly for who she was. You already made this choice, I said. Now live with it. Then I turned and walked out because I was done, and Cordelia, she had just lost everything. That I walked out that night and didn't look back. Cordelia had spent months sneaking, lying, and humiliating me, and now, she was finally facing the consequences. The moment I left the house, my phone started buzzing, her name. Over and over. That I didn't answer. Let her sit in it. Let her feel what it's like to be ignored, discarded, left behind, the way she had done to me. The next morning, I came back not to talk, not to negotiate, but to get her out. That I found her still there, sitting on the couch, eyes red, looking like she had spent the whole night crying. Good, Nate, please, she started, standing up the moment she saw me. Let's just talk about this. I shook my head. There's nothing to talk about. She took a deep breath, her hands shaking as she reached for my arm. I made a mistake, she whispered. I know that. But you can't just. I pulled away from her touch. A mistake? I laughed, shaking my head. No, Cordelia. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk from the store. This was a choice. Over and over again. She flinched like I had slapped her. Good. That I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the file I had already sent to my lawyer. Photos, messages, timestamps, every disgusting detail of her affair. Here's how this is going to work, I said, my voice cold. You're going to pack a bag and leave. Today. You'll get your chance to fight for whatever's left when the divorce papers are filed. Cordelia's breath hitched. Divorce? I raised an eyebrow. Did you really think I'd stay? She blinked. Opened her mouth. Closed it again. She had never imagined this. She had thought she could talk her way out of it. That I'd yell, that we'd fight, that maybe I'd storm off but eventually come back. She thought she still had power over me. She didn't. That I turned away and started walking upstairs to pack a bag for her. That's when she broke. Nate, please, she called after me, her voice raw. I don't love him. It wasn't about that. I paused on the steps, looking at her over my shoulder. She thought that would save her, that as long as she claimed it wasn't love, as long as she swore it didn't mean anything, I'd somehow forgive her. It almost made me laugh. So what was it about, Cordelia? I asked. The sex? The thrill? Feeling wanted? She swallowed, looking away. I nodded. That's what I thought. I turned back and kept walking, letting her sit in the mess she created, because this was the last time she would ever have control over me. It didn't take long to gather her things. A bag. A few essentials. When I came back down, she was still standing there, staring at nothing, realizing she had finally lost. Here, I said, tossing the bag onto the couch. Get out. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. Nate, don't do this. I took a step forward, meeting her gaze. No, Cordelia, I said. You did this. Her lip trembled. But I didn't care anymore. I walked to the front door, opened it wide, and waited. She hesitated, then, finally, she picked up the bag, and for the first time in our marriage, she was the one walking away. I didn't watch her go. I just closed the door, and for the first time in a long, long time, I felt free. The moment I closed that door behind Cordelia, a strange stillness settled over the house. For months, I had been living in the chaos of her lies, her excuses, her sneaking around. Now, there was nothing. No fake smiles. No late night whispers on her phone. No tension in the air, just silence. And for the first time, I could finally breathe. Cordelia didn't go quietly. I should have expected it. The text started first. Cordelia, we need to talk. Cordelia, please. Just give me a chance to explain. Cordelia, are you really going to throw everything away over one mistake? One mistake? I didn't even respond, because it wasn't one mistake. It was months of deception, months of lying, months of thinking I'd never find out. Then, the calls started. First, I ignored them. Then, after the seventh missed call, I finally picked up, not because I wanted to talk, but because I wanted to hear what desperate excuse she'd come up with next. Nate, she breathed, like she was relieved I had finally answered. Thank you for picking up. I didn't say anything. She took a shaky breath. Look, I know I messed up, okay? I know I hurt you. But you can't just shut me out like this. I couldn't. I almost laughed. That's exactly what I'm doing, Cordelia. She exhaled sharply, like she was frustrated. Like I was the unreasonable one. You can't just throw everything away. I clenched my jaw. I'm not the one who threw everything away. Silence that I could hear her trying to come up with something, some angle, some way to turn this around. I never meant for it to go this far, she finally said, her voice small. Another lie. She had plenty of chances to stop. She just never thought she'd get caught. I don't care what you meant, I said coldly. I care about what you did. She sniffled. Can we at least talk? Face to face? I didn't hesitate. No. Then I hung up, because there was nothing left to say. A week later, the papers were ready. My lawyer had everything lined up, all the proof, all the financial protections, everything I needed to make sure Cordelia got exactly what she deserved. When I handed her the envelope, she just stared at it, her fingers trembling. This is really happening, she whispered. I nodded. It is. She swallowed hard, blinking back tears. Do you feel anything at all? She asked, her voice breaking. Anything for me? I thought about that for a moment. Did I feel anger? No. Did I feel regret? Definitely not. Did I feel anything at all for her? Finally, I met her gaze. No, I said simply. I don't. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I meant it, because Cordelia was already nothing to me. Cordelia hesitated before taking the divorce papers from my hand. Like she still thought she had a chance, like she still believed she could say the right thing, do the right thing, and fix this, but she couldn't. There was nothing left to fix. She looked up at me, her eyes wet, her lips pressed together like she was trying to hold in her emotions. This isn't how it was supposed to end, she murmured. I didn't even blink. You made that decision for both of us. Her breath hitched. Still, she didn't sign, because Cordelia had always been about control. Even now, standing here with divorce papers in her hands, knowing she lost, she was still trying to find a way to rewrite the narrative. But the story was already over and I wasn't playing along anymore. She set the papers down on the table, rubbing her hands together like she was trying to steady herself. Nate, she started softly. We have 3 kids. A family. You don't just throw that away. I stared at her. You already did. She winced. Like she couldn't bear to hear me say it out loud, but it was the truth. She had months to think about what she was doing, months to choose her family over whatever cheap thrill Oliver gave her, months to stop herself before wrecking everything we built, and she hadn't. Her fingers curled into fists. I made a mistake. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. Mistakes are accidental, I said. What you did? That was a choice. Her face crumpled. She knew I was right. That I slid the pen across the table. Sign them. Her eyes darted between the papers and my face, searching for anything, a flicker of hesitation, a sign that I wasn't serious. She found nothing. After a long moment, she swallowed hard, picked up the pen, and signed her name. When she was done, she set the pen down and looked up at me one last time. Do you hate me? She whispered. That I didn't even hesitate. No, I said. I feel nothing for you. And that was worse than hate, because she had been everything to me once. Now, she was nothing at all. That I picked up the papers, turned around, and walked away. And this time, I never looked back. Cordelia had always been good at manipulation. She knew how to twist words, how to cry at the right moments, how to make herself look like the victim. But as she sat there, divorce papers in front of her, she looked defeated. For the first time since this all started, she had no control. She stared at the documents, fingers trembling slightly, as if she couldn't believe this was really happening, like she hadn't caused this. Like she hadn't thrown everything away for a cheap affair with a man who didn't even love her. Still, she hesitated. She wanted me to break first, to say something, to let her off the hook, to give her even the smallest chance at redemption, but I didn't, because I wasn't here to fix things. That I was here to end them. She finally took a breath, running her hands through her hair. "Nate," she said softly, "can we just talk?" I didn't answer. Just crossed my arms and waited. She sighed. "I know I hurt you, okay? I know I made a huge mistake. But do we really have to do this?" I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head. There it was. She wasn't sorry she cheated, she was sorry she got caught. She still thought this was negotiable, like if she played the right cards, if she said the right things, she could somehow talk her way out of it. She wasn't used to being powerless, and now that she was, she didn't know what to do. "I didn't want it to end like this," she said, her voice breaking just slightly. I raised an eyebrow. "You think I did?" She blinked at me, caught off guard. "You think I wanted to wake up one day and realize my wife had been sneaking around behind my back for months?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. She opened her mouth, but I wasn't done. "You think I wanted to find out from a private investigator that the woman I built a life with was screwing our assistant?" Cordelia winced. Looked away. Good, she needed to hear this. She needed to sit with the truth. I leaned in slightly, keeping my voice low. "You ended this marriage the second you decided that whatever you had with Oliver was more important than our family." She swallowed. Her fingers clutched the pen, but she still didn't sign. So I gave her the final push. "I don't love you anymore, Cordelia." Her breath hitched. I let the words settle. Let her feel the weight of them, because they were true. I had spent weeks, maybe months, clinging to the idea of what we used to be. But that version of us was dead. She had killed it, and I was done mourning. She looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw something real in her eyes, not manipulation. Not calculation, regret. Maybe she finally understood that I wasn't coming back, that she had lost me for good. Her lips trembled, and for a second, I thought she might actually break down, but I didn't care anymore. Whatever pain she was feeling now, she deserved it. She finally took the pen and signed her name, the final act of surrender. When she set the pen down, she wiped at her face quickly, trying to hold on to whatever dignity she had left. Then she looked at me one last time. "Do you really feel nothing for me?" she asked. I stared at her, steady. "No," I said. "Not anymore." And just like that, I stood up, took the papers, and walked away. I didn't look back, because Cordelia was no longer a part of my life. She was just a mistake I would never make again. When I walked out of that room, out of Cordelia's life for good, I expected some kind of final emotion to hit me. Maybe relief. Maybe anger. Maybe sadness, but all I felt was nothing. For so long, my life had revolved around her lies, her betrayal, her pathetic attempts to keep me blind. Now, for the first time, I was freed. No more fake kisses. No more late-night meetings. No more feeling like I was losing my mind every time I knew she was lying. I had ended it. And now, she was just a chapter one had closed. But Cordelia wasn't the type to go down quietly. I should have known she'd try one last time. The texts came first. "Cordelia, I know you hate me, but can we please just talk? Cordelia, the kids. They need both of us. Cordelia, I never wanted this to happen. Nate." I read them, then deleted them. She had plenty of time to care about the kids. She had plenty of chances to stop what she was doing. She had plenty of time to not destroy our family. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. I met with my lawyer. We finalized everything. Custody. My kids were staying with me. No judge was going to side with a mother who had been sneaking around with the family assistant. Finances. I had protected myself months ago. Cordelia wasn't getting a cent more than she deserved. Assets. The house was mine. The business was mine. She had lost everything. I didn't do this out of revenge. I did this because Cordelia didn't deserve to walk away from this unscathed. She had already walked all over me for months. Now, she was the one getting discarded. A week later, I saw him, Oliver, the man who had been in my home, around my kids, sleeping with my wife like I was just some fool to be laughed at. I was out grabbing coffee, finally enjoying a morning without Cordelia's presence lingering over me, when I spotted him. He was sitting alone, looking miserable. No Cordelia. No confidence. Just a guy who had ruined his own life without realizing it. I smirked to myself. Maybe he thought she'd stay with him. Maybe he thought they'd get there happily ever after. Maybe he thought he had won. But Cordelia, she wasn't the kind of woman who stuck around when things got hard. She had lost everything, and it looked like Oliver had, too. That I didn't approach him. I didn't say a word because Oliver wasn't worth my time, just like Cordelia wasn't. That I walked past him, grabbed my coffee, and stepped outside into the fresh air. For the first time in a long time, I felt light. Cordelia was gone, Oliver was nothing, and me, I was finally moving forward, without them, and that was the best revenge of all. That I had already moved on. Cordelia, she was falling apart. The divorce papers were signed, custody was settled, the house was legally mine, and I had done what I never thought I'd be able to do. I erased her from my life, but she wasn't handling it well. At first, she tried to play strong, posting online, pretending like she was thriving, like she wasn't the one who had just been discarded like a used napkin. But the cracks started to show, and soon, everyone saw her for what she really was. Our friends knew, our family knew. Cordelia had spent months sneaking around with a man we had trusted, someone she had brought into our lives, into our home, into the space where our kids grew up. She wasn't just a cheater, she was a laughingstock. Her friends stopped inviting her places. Turns out, people don't trust a woman who cheats on her husband with the help. Her family didn't rush to defend her. They weren't proud of what she had done. People at work knew. The business world loves gossip, and this was better than TV. She wasn't untouchable anymore. She was just a woman who had ruined her own life. I knew things had really hit rock bottom when she showed up at my house. It had been weeks since I had last spoken to her. I had ignored her texts, her calls, her weak attempts to talk. And then, one evening, I opened my front door, and there she was, Cordelia, looking nothing like the confident, smug woman who had thought she would get away with it all. She looked lost. Like she didn't recognize her own life anymore. I stood there, arms crossed. "What do you want?" She exhaled, shivering slightly. "Can I come in?" I raised an eyebrow. "Why?" She swallowed. I just want to talk." I leaned against the doorframe, looking her up and down. I already knew what this was. She wasn't here because she missed me, she wasn't here because she wanted me back, she was here because she had nothing left, and now, she wanted to see if she could crawl back into the life she had thrown away. "You're wasting your time, Cordelia," I said flatly. She flinched. "Nate, please." "No," I cut her off. "There's nothing to say." She blinked rapidly, tears welling in her eyes. "I lost everything," she whispered. I tilted my head. "And whose fault is that?" Her mouth opened, then closed, because for the first time, she had no one to blame but herself. She had spent months lying, sneaking, betraying, humiliating me, and now, she had no home. No respect. No one to clean up her mess. She wiped at her face, like she was desperate to keep some of her dignity. She took a shaky breath. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I studied her for a long moment, then I smiled. Not a cruel smile. Not a bitter one. A smile that told her exactly what she needed to know: I don't care. And then, I closed the door, this time, for good. Closing the door on Cordelia for the final time should have felt like a victory, and in a way, it was, but it didn't feel like revenge. It didn't feel like a dramatic ending, the kind you see in movies where the betrayed husband walks away in slow motion while everything behind him burns. It just felt finished, like the last page of a book I would never read again. After that night, Cordelia kept trying not to get me back. Even she knew that was impossible. But to rewrite the story, she told her friends that the marriage had been falling apart long before she cheated. They didn't buy it. She tried to make me look like the villain, cold, heartless, unwilling to work through our problems. They reminded her that she had been sleeping with our assistant. She even tried to reconnect with our kids, but the damage was done. They weren't little anymore. They saw everything: the reputation she spent years building, the perfect life she had crafted for herself, gone, and no one felt bad for her. One afternoon, I was out grabbing coffee when I saw him, Oliver, sitting by himself, looking like a wreck. His usual arrogance was gone. He looked hollow, defeated, miserable. I smirked to myself. I already knew what had happened. Cordelia left him. Of course, she did. She didn't love him, she loved what he represented. The thrill. The excitement. The rush of sneaking around, of breaking the rules, but once the affair became real, once there were no more secrets, no more hiding, it lost its appeal. That he was just another mistake she was trying to erase. That I didn't approach him. I didn't say a word because Oliver wasn't worth my time, just like Cordelia wasn't. That night, I sat outside on my patio, looking up at the sky. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about Cordelia, Oliver, or the past. That I was thinking about my future. A future where I wasn't being lied to. A future where I wasn't doubting myself every second. A future where I was finally free. Cordelia had tried to break me. Instead, she had set me free, and as I took a deep breath, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't even thinking about revenge, because the best revenge was already happening. Cordelia was miserable. Oliver was alone, and me, I was finally, truly happy without her. For months, my life had been tangled in Cordelia's lies, betrayal, and destruction. Now, she was gone, and yet, sometimes just for a second I'd catch myself wondering, what if she had never cheated? What if I had seen the signs earlier? What if I had walked away before she had the chance to destroy everything? But here's the thing about what ifs: they don't change reality. Cordelia wasn't the woman I once loved, maybe she never was, and I wasn't wasting another second trying to understand her choices. She had already lost me, and I had already won. One day, while I was picking up groceries, I saw her name flash across my phone. That I hesitated for half a second, not because I wanted to answer, but because I was curious what excuse she was going to try this time. That I picked up. Cordelia let out a relieved breath. "Nate, you answered." I didn't say anything. Just waited. She sighed. "I don't even know why I'm calling." I exhaled slowly. "Then don't." She paused. Like she hadn't expected me to be so indifferent. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," she said quietly. Again. I didn't roll my eyes. Didn't scoff. Didn't get angry. I just nodded to myself. "Okay," I said. She let out a breath. "That's it?" I smiled slightly. "What else do you want me to say?" She was quiet because she didn't know. She had called hoping for something. Closure? Forgiveness? Proof that she still mattered to me, but she didn't, not anymore. "You don't have to respond," I said. "But just so we're clear, this is the last time we ever speak." Cordelia sucked in a breath. "I hope you figure things out for yourself," I said. "But that's not my problem anymore." Then I hung up. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel regret. I just felt done, because she wasn't my concern anymore, and that was true freedom. After that final call, Cordelia became nothing more than a name from my past. She had been a part of my life for years, someone I once thought I'd grow old with, someone I trusted, but now, she was just another lesson learned. That I didn't block her number. I didn't need to. She never texted again. She knew, just as I did, that whatever we had once been was dead and buried. That I heard things, not because I went looking, but because people love gossip. Cordelia had tried to move on, but nothing was working out the way she thought it would. Oliver was gone. He had been nothing more than a temporary escape, and when reality hit, they both realized there was nothing real between them. Her reputation was trashed. People saw her differently now. She wasn't respected. She wasn't admired. She was just the woman who destroyed her own family for a cheap affair. She was struggling financially. She had fought for more in the divorce, but I had been smarter than her. She walked away with what the court deemed fair, which wasn't much. For so long, she had been in control. She had called the shots, played the game, gotten away with everything. Now, she had lost everything, and I didn't care. One evening, I sat outside with a drink in hand, staring up at the night sky. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the real realization that my life was mine again. Cordelia's choices weren't my concern, her struggles weren't my problem, her regrets meant nothing to me. For the first time in a long time, I felt weightless. She had once been everything to me, now, she was nothing, and I was finally, truly free. There's a moment in life when you finally let go. Not in anger, not in pain, not in regret, just pure release. For months, Cordelia had taken up space in my mind, in my thoughts, in the shadows of my life. She had been a storm I had to weather, a wound I had to heal from, a mistake I had to learn from, but now, she was nothing, and I had never felt freer. People say karma doesn't work fast, but for Cordelia, it worked right on time. She had built her life around the illusion of control, around the idea that she could have it all, that she could manipulate, lie, cheat, and still come out on top, except, she didn't. She lost, and I didn't have to lift a finger. She did it to herself. She had no real friends left. The people who once admired her kept their distance. They saw the truth now, that she wasn't loyal, wasn't trustworthy, wasn't someone they wanted to be around. Oliver was long gone. Whatever they had wasn't love, wasn't passion, wasn't real. It was a fantasy built on deception. And when the excitement of the affair faded, so did their relationship. She lost everything for nothing. Her finances crumbled. The divorce didn't favor her. She had assumed she'd walk away with more, that she'd still have power. But I had protected myself. She got what she legally deserved, which wasn't much. Cordelia had played the game, thinking she was untouchable. Now, she was just a washed-out version of the woman she used to be, and for the first time in her life, nobody cared that I wasn't thinking about her anymore. I wasn't checking my phone, wondering if she'd text. I wasn't looking at our old house, our old life, feeling the weight of what she had ruined. That I was done. But fate has a funny way of tying up loose ends. One afternoon, I was walking through the city when I saw her. Cordelia. She wasn't dressed like she used to be. No expensive outfits, no perfect makeup, no confidence in her walk. She looked hollow, like someone who had lost everything. Like someone who knew they would never get it back. She spotted me, too. Our eyes met, and for a brief moment, I saw something in hers. Regret, not the fake kind. Not the kind she used to manipulate her way out of trouble, the real kind. The kind that stays with you forever. She took a small step forward, like she wanted to say something, like she thought I might acknowledge her, but I didn't. I walked right past her. I didn't slow down. I didn't nod. I didn't spare her a second glance, because Cordelia wasn't worth remembering. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. That night, I sat outside, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. This was my life now. One where I didn't have to wonder where she was. One where I didn't have to question who she was with. One where I wasn't stuck in the mess she created. She was gone, for good, and me? I was better than ever. Cordelia had spent months sneaking around, lying, betraying. Everything we had built. She had tried to break me. Instead, she had set me free. I picked up my glass, smirking slightly to myself, to never looking back. And with that, I took a sip, leaned back, and let the night wash over me, because Cordelia, she was just a lesson I would never have to learn again, and me, I was finally, truly free.